Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for coming, Ms. Secretary. First of all, I want to commend the people that are working in the call centers, especially those that are still working there and picking up this slack. I've told my constituents, make sure they treat you with respect, because you're not the cause of this. And this is definitely not the fault of the people who are working there. We've had some great responses, and my staff have done or had great relationships with them. But Secretary, last year when you came before this committee, you and your team were telling us about the need for all of this. You explained the difference because there was some concern that this was supposed to be strictly for modernization. However, we drilled down, and initially it was just an ask for $57 million, and there was no clarification of this. It took us drilling down and finding out that $42 million of this was supposed to go to keep the call centers open. Now, we had serious questions about the modernization program, and I think those questions are well-founded. There's a lot of waste. I mean, it's been identified in this committee and in the Senate committees over and over again. Over $100 million. Actually, about, when you put everything together, we've spent about $350 million, and we haven't gotten there. Now, I used to write programs for my military unit in D-Base 3 and 3+. I know a little bit about how those coding packets go. And that was back in the mid-1980s. And interestingly, the most robust system that we have in the Commonwealth is the PennDOT licensing system. That was done on Lotus Approach and Domino systems back in the 1980s. And those things have been able to actually, with the coding packets, to continue to be upgraded. And it hasn't cost anything close to this. What really got my goat over this whole deal was when we approved the $42 million that you said you needed to keep those call centers open, and then you came back to us and we put the language into the bill to have the Auditor General come in, to have you justify the expenditures, as well as to get the RFP to us. And then you come back to us and say, we need the whole $57 million or we're going to be shutting the call centers down. Madam Secretary, to me, that is blackmail. I felt like we were being extorted. And that's why I stood on the floor, and I said as much on the floor when the amendment came through. And quite honestly, I'm not surprised at the Senate refusing to take up the bill after we passed that amendment. We should have given you just the $42 million. You said that's what you could have done it on. And I believe that's a big part of why the Senate refused to take this bill up. It had a lot to do with the fact that you told us one thing, and then you turn around and come back to us and tell us you need the whole thing, or you're going to shut the call centers down.
May I respond? Because I take very seriously your thinking that I told you something that was untrue, or that I blackmailed you. I take responsibility if there is any miscommunication between my legislative staff and your legislative staff. Having said that, we were responding on a daily basis to every question that we were getting from both House and Senate members. So somebody would say to us, okay, this is what you need for this, and then they'd send us 3 more questions, and we would answer 3 more questions, and then they'd send us 3 more questions from that, and we would answer 3 more questions. So when the question became, well, what happens if you don't get this money? The answer was, I have to close call centers. I have to find $57 million worth of savings in order to make the books balance.
I'll ask you this then.
Sure.
What were you going to do to pay for that contract that you were going to award based on that then? If you needed the $57 million to keep the call center open, how were you going to fund the contract?
I have money in the current budget now, for the first down payment that I need to have in the bank when I sign a contract for benefit modernization, because I do not think it is a choice to push that off. From our perspective at L&I, we didn't have the, here's the federal dollars and here's the SIF dollars, and here's the set of books that ran to the federal dollars and here's the set of books that ran to the SIF dollars.
But that runs counter to your testimony here and your team's testimony when we asked you, you needed the money to keep the call centers open and you needed additional money to award the contract, and you told us specifically in that hearing that you were going to need that money in order to award the contract, or you couldn't get the contract.
And that's where I am still today. So today, I made those reductions knowing that in calendar year 2017, or what I call, we have 3 different calendar years. So technically, federal fiscal year 2016-2017, which runs October through September, that sometime before September 30th of 2017, I need to have at least $15 million that I can sign on the dotted line, and I have that. So when I made those cuts, to get, I guess to your point, if I'm following your math, I didn't cut just $42 million because I need to be able to fix this computer system.
No, it's the 15 or 14 plus $1 million that we assumed was going to be used for the improvement of the
and it's in
computer
reserve.
system.
If you look at the, we gave, I think you have them, we gave you the documents that I think that were prepared for the Appropriations Committee that shows the spending going forward from now until 2012. And if you'll notice in that budget, there's $15 million budgeted for each of the 4 years for benefit modernization. We don't know that it's going to cost $60 million until the final bids RFP process is concluded, but based on what other states have done, that's what we estimate it will be. And it's budgeted for in 17, 18, 19, and 20.
All right. I think